became part of Arcata Township, and Pine River Township had lost all those taxes. Well, Mr. Wood was so furious that for the remaining part of the session, however many days it was, he would sit at his desk and he was in a funk. And when it would be a roll call vote, you would hear, Mr. Wood? No. And then the next issue, Mr. Wood? No. And then it came an issue if he favored Mr. Wood? No. And he was very, very upset to think this had been put over on him. He even voted against the things he favored and became the laughingstock of the House. So I don't think he got reelected, but he came back to Pine River Township in any case. And once again, knowing the right people and, in a sense, having some people behind you, Mr. Wright prevailed again, and that, of course, made hard feelings between the sister villages. Well, about that time, this is number 4, and this all happening in the 1880s, about that time, Mr. Wright contrived to bring a normal school to Alma. The Central Michigan Normal School came from Fenton. He said, I will build 2 brick buildings and give them to you, and if you will come. And of course, a normal school took 8th grade graduates and gave them a year of classes in pedagogy, teaching them how to be teachers, and then they were qualified to go and teach in the many, many one-room schoolhouses across the counties. And this normal school also offered classes in business. That was new, and that was significant. Well, it barely got underway for its first session when the Presbyterian Synod of Michigan announced that it wanted to found a college in northern Michigan. Anything north of Lansing at that time was northern Michigan. And all the towns wanted it. Saginaw wanted it, thought it had a good chance getting it. St. Louis wanted it desperately. Greenville wanted it. And they did everything they could. They begged, they cajoled, they promised. Mr. Wright said to the Synod, I will give you the 2 normal school buildings. And then a devout Presbyterian lumberman from Bay City said, I will give you $50,000. And with no strings attached, which probably in today's terms is approaching $1 million. And well, what are they going to say? What are they going to choose? They chose Alma, so Alma ends up with Alma College. And that Saginaw took it gracefully. They took the loss gracefully, and they said, we didn't work hard enough to get that college, and we admit it. And Greenville, I don't know what they thought, but here in St. Louis, there was a real sour taste to think that Alma once again had gotten this, and so it created more hard feelings. Well, nothing really happened for a few years. One thing that did happen, the Ann Arbor Railroad did improve that stub line between Ithaca and Alma, and it did kind of become the main line for the Ann Arbor Railroad. Fewer and fewer trains came up the old railroad between Ithaca and St. Louis, and St. Louis is very nervous about this, fearing that they're going to lose the whole thing. Well, in 1897, a law was going to be passed that said that if a town, like St. Louis, had paid money to a railroad to lure it to the town, that railroad could not abandon that town. So St. Louis was just waiting for this law to go into effect, because that meant the rails had to stay. Well, Mr. Wright knew that this law was going into effect. By this time, he was president of the Ann Arbor Railroad. And so, on a night, a Sunday morning, early, still dark, after midnight, when the courts were closed and you could not get an injunction to halt action, he had his people, St. Louis would have called them henchmen, take 2 trains with flat cars, back to back, down to the middle of the rail between here and Ithaca, and by kerosene lantern they started popping the rails loose, loading them on the flat cars, and the trains moved away from each other, one toward Ithaca, one toward St. Louis, all night long, popping the rails up, loading them on the flat cars, and by Sunday morning, the rails were gone. The railroad between Ithaca and St. Louis had been stolen. It was gone. Well, St. Louis sued, and they said, we want our money back if we've lost our railroad. Well, it turned out that of the $25,000, only $10,000 had ever really appeared, and they did get the $10,000 back, and it was distributed to the people who had given it or their heirs. And that's a whole other story in itself, because some people had passed away, and getting it to the right people caused an awful lot of trouble too. So there were 5 things that Mr. Wright did for the good of Alma, and it certainly did not benefit St. Louis, and it intensified the hard feelings between the sister cities. After that, by that time he was pretty old, and most of the things that were being done on his behalf were being done by associates. He kind of stepped back from things, and to, I suppose, St. Louis's pleasure, didn't cause any more trouble. It's interesting that each town has its identity, although they're so close together, and now separated basically by an interstate highway. We've grown together. But the identity thing is very, very strong. And when I came to teach at Alma High School in 1965, I came into a building that was a composite of 3 different buildings. The old original 1912 high school, a more modern connecting building, and what had been an elementary school that dated from 1905. These were old buildings, and they were packed with kids. Alma desperately needed a new high school. And so somebody in Alma was either brave enough or foolhardy enough to suggest that maybe St. Louis and Alma could go together and build one high school. You're laughing because you know how far that went. The talk in St. Louis was probably pretty hot, and people probably just laughed and said, what are they thinking? Like, what are they going to do? Turn sharks and panthers into, I don't know, some kind of a conglomerate or something, And that idea didn't go very far at all. And that impressed me because I was kind of a stranger. I mean, I'd grown up by Mount Pleasant. I didn't know the feelings between the sister cities, but I think in athletics especially, there's a real strong town school identity, and you can't really ever get rid of that. And such a thing as a one high school for the 2 towns, that would not be apt to happen unless it was absolutely mandated by law. Well, in the last 5 years, things have turned around. St. Louis has taken some real bad hits, and I think that anytime we hear the word chemical or chemical company, we get that feeling. And right now, we're thinking about what are we going to do about water, because some of our wells are contaminated. Issues that involve Alma, St. Louis, and Pine River Township have brought those entities together in a sense of collaboration that they have never had before. I mean, where there was a feeling between the executives of the towns, that sort of thing. Now you got city managers and Ithaca included that are willing to talk. And this is kind of new, and it takes a little getting used to when you see the city managers getting together and they're friends, and they've got issues that they have to work on together. And the supervisors of Pine River Township, all these people are collaborating. And the sense of collaboration has washed over the entire county. Every municipality, every township has to have a master plan. So they have to make their own. But now, I think every governmental entity in Gratiot County is online now to come up with one master plan. It can be tweaked if it needs to be for the individual towns, but they're saying, hey, we want to come aboard too, and we can all benefit from this. So the sense of collaboration of the sister cities in Pine River Township with its immense growth has had a very, I say, salubrious effect on the entire county. This is cutting edge, and much of it is because of Greater Gratiot development helping and giving some guidance and that sort of thing. No other rural county in the state of Michigan is doing this. We are the prototype. We are the one they're going to come to say, how did you do this? And it's something that we can be very proud of. So some pride has been swallowed, and it's to the good of all of us, and especially for those of us that live in the sister cities. things are probably as good as they've ever been, and I'm proud to say that. Thank you.